Things are getting so weird that Brian Stelter actually made sense for the first time in his entire life and accurately articulated what it is that's going on in our country.
Rarely has the president sounded so out of touch with his own base as he did earlier this week with his comments about asking why are people still talking about Epstein. President Trump knows why people are still talking about Epstein. He used to be Epstein's pal, right? They were friends decades ago. Of course, that friendship ended many, many years ago, and Trump denounced Epstein very loudly and clearly. But Trump knows exactly why his base is energized by this story.
At this point, I have Epstein fatigue. I'm tired of the cover-up, but unfortunately, it continues. And over the weekend, President Trump poured fuel on the fire by making some ridiculous statements he posted on Truth Social, understandably causing many in the MAGA movement to revolt. So stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you're new here, and I'll cover all the latest, ranging from the more plausible explanations as to why this is happening to some of the more fringe ideas. Of course, Pam Bondi duped a bunch of conservative social media influencers earlier this year, bringing them to the White House, giving them binders filled with redacted versions of the documents, or some documents at least, that had already been made public years ago, and labeled the binders Phase 1. So even the people who are able to kind of look past that just odd and, really deceptive and shameful publicity stunt thought, okay, well, now she's going to actually release the other documents, which she said were on her desk, only to release absolutely nothing and said there was nothing to see here and just move along. Then during a cabinet meeting last week, Pam Bondi was asked about this suspicious activity and why all these lingering questions weren't answered. And then President Trump got upset and expressed his kind of shock that people were still interested in this case, which was the most tone-deaf thing that he has ever said, causing many people to understandably be outraged. But instead of getting the message, over the weekend he posted a very lengthy post on Truth Social, basically doubling down, telling people that it's no big deal. Which is especially bizarre considering his previous statements on the matter, like this.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
But then later he expressed hesitancy about digging deeper into the Epstein case.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would
I
you,
did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others.
And last week, Bill O'Reilly expanded on this point, saying this.
I talked to President Trump man to man, eye to eye, on St. Patrick's Day about this and the Kennedy files and the King files. It was all one conversation. And he said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed because there's not going to be any context. Media doesn't care about context. So you can't do that.
And then Jeffrey Epstein's former lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, dropped this bombshell.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them.
Now that's a clip that's going viral and raising a lot of questions, understandably, but it actually is taken out of context. It's shortened, it's truncated, and if you watch his response to a follow-up question, it actually puts his comments in a completely different light.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them. But they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers.
What he's saying here is not that the politicians and the businessmen are being protected because they were involved in Jeffrey Epstein's activities. He is literally saying that the reason why the documents aren't being released is because they were all falsely accused. And by releasing the accusations and the names of those accused, then that is going to be very bad for their reputation. So he is literally running cover for Epstein. He himself claims that he was falsely accused by one of the women and then sued her for defamation and got her to retract her claims, who then later said that she must have misidentified him and that it wasn't him at all. And so he is trying to say that all of the girls in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit, or the women, if there were any actual adults in his group, were all just falsely accusing politicians and businessmen of being involved in that situation in order to try to extort them and blackmail them. And the memes that are coming out about this are extremely powerful. A meme is worth 1,000 words. And obviously these are memes done by those on the right because the left can't meme. And I'll show you some of the more powerful ones, and then I'll get into my assessment of what I think is happening here regarding this very strange situation. This meme, Epstein's List, in the style of the poster for Schindler's List, quoting Pam Bondi and others making contradictory remarks about what it is that's going on. And then there's this one. I told you, these memes hit hard. And this one. And this one. You know what I haven't heard yet? A federal judge ordering Trump's Department of Justice to release the Epstein list. And this one, FBI Director Kash Patel just burying his head in the sand, but there may actually be a somewhat plausible explanation for what it is that's going on here. It's troubling times like these that we turn to comedians to try to bring us some levity, but even sometimes there's no way to even joke about such seriousness. So here is comedian Tim Dillon expressing what he thinks is going on, which is one of the more plausible explanations.
I think Trump knows they'll kill him. I think Trump knows that they'll kill him.
And I would add, not just about himself, but more likely members of his family, Melania, his kids, his grandkids. Highly likely he got a talk by a certain group of people connected to a certain little foreign country about how the system actually works and what would happen if he opened up this can of worms. Just like the talk that Robert De Niro, who was playing Frank Sheeran in The Irishman, gave to Al Pacino, who was playing Jimmy Hoffa, when he, as one of his friends, was trying to convince Jimmy Hoffa not to pursue leading up the union again.
Tony told the old man to tell me, to tell you, it's what it is.
This is him telling him to stand down. They're going to let the other mafia guy, a more connected mafia guy, get the spot.
What it is. It's what it is. Please, listen to me.
It's starting to dawn on him, you see?
They wouldn't dare.
Don't
They wouldn't dare.
Jimmy,
Please, Frank, come on.
don't say they wouldn't dare.
No.
Yeah, don't say they wouldn't dare, because they did. If that's the case, then that's a very difficult position for President Trump to be in. Now, others say that Epstein must have dirt on President Trump. And while that is actually somewhat plausible, although if he did, I would just add that it certainly wouldn't be with kids. President Trump was a well-known philanderer, playboy, and most likely did have an affair with Stormy Daniels. And certainly is possible that Epstein would have got an adult woman, one of President Trump's types, to seduce him to get some compromising material on him. But if that was the case, then James Comey, former director of the FBI, would have had that information, and he hasn't even hinted that that was even a possibility. And now many of the conservative ink pundits on the right are denying that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in any kind of a blackmail operation. Certainly never, ever would have been involved with one with Israel's Mossad, Israel's CIA, and insist that it was only him and Ghislaine Maxwell. People like Mark Levin, who posted this lengthy screed denouncing MAGA influencers online who keep talking about it and asking questions, calling them desperate and saying that they are narcissists and bigots and ignorant about history, and that they're just conspiracy theorists and intentionally deceitful. And then you have clowns like this, all these wannabe social media stars who are just cashing in on the clickbait ever since Twitter X got monetized, just putting out their engagement chum. Why hasn't Pam Bondi released the Epstein files? Asked this guy back in February. Now he says he just doesn't give a bleep about Epstein anymore. I won't play the clip. I'll spare you of having to hear his voice again, but Ben Shapiro says that on the list of priorities regarding the Epstein cover-up for most Americans, it ranks as 0. It's not even on anybody's radar. Nobody cares at all, he says. Which is extremely interesting because here's Laura Ingraham at Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit over the weekend, where there were 7,000 attendees. This is like a mainstream conservative event. Okay, certainly people who are not mostly as informed as we are, people who are still like watching Fox News and thinking that they're going to give the whole story about situations. People are ignorant about a lot of racial issues and foreign policy entanglements that the United States is engaged in. But this is their response when polled about whether or not they care.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap.
So everybody there is upset, suspicious, wants to know more about what it is that's going on. So what are you going to believe? 7,000 people at a mainstream conservative event, or Ben Shapiro? Which he actually would care about, but it implicates a certain little country that he loves and often places ahead of America, which you're not supposed to say, but he himself has admitted really the only reason that he is working in American media is on their behalf, while at the same time hoping that his audience just isn't aware or dismisses his blatant hypocrisy like this.
They say that I want America to fight wars for Israel. Nope. First of all, Israel can take care of herself.
Oh, really? Is that why they needed our stealth bombers and our bunker busters to go over there and take out their nuclear facilities, Ben? Poor Ben has spewed so many lies over the years, he can't help keep track of them, or just doesn't care about his blatant hypocrisy, because here he is at another event hosted by the same organization saying this.
Do you think Israel is in a race against time, in a race to secure its geostrategic position?
Whoops, a little Freudian slip there. In a race against time to secure their Jewish position?
In a race to secure its geostrategic position before the U.S. becomes beholden to the left and its anti-Israel bias?
Yes.
This was right before the election.
The question as to whether Israel has got a short time frame in order to ensure its own security for the future as the left gains in power. The answer is obviously yes. I mean, you've seen the slow walking of the aid from the Biden administration, despite congressional approval of that same aid.
But I thought that Israel didn't need our help. But here he is saying that they won't survive without our tax dollars. I'm actually shocked that there's been such an awakening about America's problematic foreign policy with a certain little country over there in the Middle East. But then again, at the same time, I mean, at this point, you would literally have to be a complete moron or deaf, dumb, and blind to not understand what's going on. When the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was first sworn in, and then instead of getting to work to help America, try to fix our country, he said this.
The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done.
We're overdue in giving a foreign country more American tax dollars, despite America on the road to bankruptcy, on the road to serfdom, with the national debt just continuing to skyrocket out of control every second of every day. I mean, what's next? Are American politicians who are supposed to obviously represent Americans going to say that even if, or rather when we go bankrupt because of this reckless spending, that they'll still continue to give our tax dollars to Israel? Oh, wait, what's this?
I have said to people when they ask me if this capital crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid. And I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. That's fundamental to who we, fundamental
to who we are. So yeah, it doesn't matter if the United States Capitol is destroyed in some kind of an attack or a war. Instead of using our tax dollars to rebuild it, the politicians are just going to give more of our money over to Israel. Here's what happens when you try to make these common sense points to your bosses in conservative mainstream media. Here is Matt Walsh over at the Daily Wire, who I do have a lot of respect for, has done some great work. Obviously got some issues with him, won't get into those now, won't rehash those. But here he is, sounding like a real American, only to upset his bosses.
I don't remember who tweeted. Someone tweeted something like, if you're an American patriot, it means you're pro-Israel, or something like that. Yeah. Right. This idea that, like, it is your patriotic duty to have this particular feeling about another country, no matter what the other country is. I don't care what country it is. So that goes too far on that.
I do think that there is something patriotic about supporting our allies, because we form alliances because it's in our national interest to form alliances. And having formed those alliances and
yeah, but you don't have a you don't have a patriotic duty to support any country that is not your own.
But you know, in this case, we just should back Israel.
but hold on a second.
Stay tuned because there's still a little more, but this is why I said if you're new here, you really need to subscribe to my channel, because where else are you going to get such politically incorrect and, well, I guess a little immature commentary than right here? And share my videos on your social media feeds. When I say share, I mean post a link to the original video, or just straight up to my channel and encourage people who are following you to come over here and subscribe, because this channel has been shadow banned. This channel is like not growing at all. Okay. Still stuck at like 1.9 million subscribers, and I know there are definitely worse problems to have, but we really should get it up to at least 2 million just for like the symbolic victories. So please give the channel a shout out, and not just a shout out, but link to the videos or link to youtube.com/MarkDice. And maybe sometime in the next few years, we can have that happen. But anyway, Kash Patel, the head director of the FBI, what say you?
We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel, bring home Israelis, and make sure we stand by our #1 ally in Israel.
I know I've shown some of these clips before, but not everybody who's subscribed to the channel watches every given video. I think on average, even like YouTube-wide, it's only like maybe 15, 20% of subscribers watch any given video. So I apologize, don't mean to be repetitive, but I think some of these clips are so important that I just don't want anybody to miss them. Here's another good friend of Ben Shapiro, fellow neocon, supposed journalist Douglas Murray, saying that if something were to happen to Israel, that the United States itself would no longer be able to even continue either.
Western civilization could not survive the destruction of the Jewish state, because it would be, among much else, the cutting away of the whole tree that we're on, and Western civilization would die.
That's extremely bizarre, considering the United States, which was founded in 1776, obviously, long after the Jewish temple in 70 AD was destroyed, and the diaspora of the Jews, and long before the creation of the modern state of Israel in 1948. And despite people like Ben Shapiro saying that nobody is interested in the Jeffrey Epstein situation, Tucker Carlson was raising awareness over the weekend at Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit, and then later in an interview with Charlie Kirk, continuing to raise those concerns.
So the real scandal here is who he was working for and where the money came from. That's the actual scandal, and no one will say anything about it because the answer
was it American intelligence?
No,
was it Saudi intelligence?
No.
Was it British intelligence?
It was Israeli intelligence. And everyone's embarrassed to say that because you're not allowed to say that or something because you're a hater, but you're not a hater at all. You can think Israel's a great country that deserves our support, as I do.
My best memories are in Israel.
Yeah, it's great. I've taken my family on vacation there, but it's still a foreign country, and it's a fair question to ask, were you running a blackmail scheme in our country? And I think the answer is yes. So they were asked, and they're like, we're not going to tell you.
The good news is that the State Department has cut over 1,300 staffers as part of slimming down government waste. And there were photographs of many of them seen leaving their worthless jobs, the government gravy train, in tears and consoling each other. Usually it's bad when people lose their jobs, but I think we can make an exception in this case. Or maybe if they're lucky, they could get transferred over to Alligator Alcatraz. And if you support that, you want to support my work, get a great shirt, and signal to others what kind of an American you are, a real American, then head on over to my online store and order your Alligator Alcatraz shirt or tank top or woman's cut as well. And this is available in 2 different styles, the kind of big, bold version and a more subtle version as well, which is kind of like a pocket design, but there's no pockets on this shirt. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.